Welcome again to the center of truth, where we strip away the predator's deception and confront the stark, clinical reality of narcissistic collapse. Today we enter a space that is both unsettling and illuminating. We are discussing energy, specifically sexual energy, the high intensity fuel that keeps the narcissist's fabricated self from falling apart. Have you ever asked yourself what happens when that supply is cut off? When the predator is denied the very source they rely on to feel powerful, we are forced to confront a disturbing question. What revolting, frantic, and pathological behaviors surface when the sexual supply disappears? Stay attentive, because we are about to reveal the scavenger hiding beneath the mask. Picture a psychological thriller where the creature is no longer concealed in darkness, but exposed in plain sight, hungry and desperate. That is the narcissist stripped of their primary source of physical validation. To you, intimacy builds connection. To them, it is a calculated extraction. It is how they drain your vitality and store it inside their empty core. When you withhold that energy, you are not merely refusing an act. You are cutting off the oxygen to their ego. The silence that follows is not calm or reflective. It is thick and suffocating. The quiet of a predator plotting their next move in a world that suddenly feels barren and cold. You may have witnessed the mask flip before, but nothing compares to the shift that occurs when the narcissist realizes their sexual currency no longer holds value with you. It begins with a look, a sharp, detached stare that exposes the truth of their desire. It was never truly about you. It was always about what you supplied. We are dismantling the myth of sexual supply to expose the machinery beneath. In their perception, you are not a partner. You are a power source. And when that source shuts down, the system starts to malfunction in ways that are both disturbing and viscerally repellent. On the haunting question every survivor eventually asks is simple. Who was I really sharing a bed with? The answer is painful. You were involved with a parasite that treated your warmth as a commodity. Once that commodity disappears, the narcissist enters an energy crisis. They cannot exist without reflection. They cannot feel significant without the physical conquest of another person. This is where the slow burn horror unfolds. They do not simply leave. They begin to scavenge. They search for tiny fragments of energy in the darkest spaces, morphing into a version of themselves that is almost unrecognizable. Munder. Think of the narcissist as a high-powered machine running on a stolen battery. When that battery drains and the current stops, the engine begins to fail. They adopt behaviors meant to provoke, wound, or force you back into compliance. It becomes psychological warfare at its peak. They wield shame. They deploy guilt. They attempt sexual sabotage to regain control, but they are no longer the smooth manipulator. They're frantic and starving, willing to feed on scraps of your negative emotion just to feel a flicker of power. Bammed. Many assume a narcissist will immediately replace lost supply. Often they do, yet there is usually a suspended period when they are trapped in a void. This is the gray chamber of the narcissistic mind. During this stage of collapse, they fixate obsessively on your energy. They observe you closely, searching for weakness to exploit. The disturbing behaviors we are examining are symptoms of a psyche that has exhausted its credit. They are bankrupt, seeking anyone willing to pay for their inner emptiness. Why is this transformation so mesmerizing to witness? Because it marks the moment the predator becomes the scavenger. The narcissist who once stood elevated on a pedestal you built, is now crawling through the mud of personal insecurity. They are unsettled by the reality that you have reclaimed your power. Your energy belongs to you again, and that alone challenges their imagined superiority. The aging narcissist faces a particularly cruel fate. They may have relied on fading beauty and thinning charm. Without constant sexual validation, the decay hidden beneath the surface begins to show. This is not merely a breakup. It is a structural breakdown of a personality built on objectifying others. The narcissist fears invisibility above all else. To be ignored feels like annihilation. When you stop feeding their need, they sense themselves dissolving. That is why their conduct becomes erratic and invasive. They attempt to anchor themselves to existence by provoking a reaction from you. They can make you uncomfortable, violated, or diminished. They can reassure themselves that they still matter. Understanding this protects you. Their disturbing habits are not expressions of love or longing. They are clinical signs of an addiction to power. They are energy addicts experiencing withdrawal. The cinematic narrative of their life reaches a turning point where the supposed hero is revealed as the villain. The more you understand their inner chaos, the less influence they have to drag you back into emptiness. We uncover this hidden dynamic so you can walk away whole, leaving the predator to face the darkness they created. Come on, stay with me as we move into the next phase, where we dissect the raw psychology behind their desperate need for energy. We will examine the internal battery and the parasitic cycle that defines their survival. This clarity allows you to stop pitying them. The narcissist is not a wounded soul waiting to be repaired. They are a calculated individual who sees your life force as a resource to exploit. The story is only beginning, and exposing their sexual unraveling is how you secure your final freedom. The lights are rising, and the scavenger has nowhere left to hide. To truly grasp the behaviors of the starving narcissist, we must first study the sterile, echoing laboratory of their inner world. At the core lies a void where a stable identity should exist. This is not poetic exaggeration, but psychological reality. They lack an internal foundation of self-worth. They are like a house without power lines. To light the rooms, they have to connect themselves to someone else. Attention and admiration become their electricity. It gives them a quick, intense feeling of being alive and in control. Without that connection, they feel cold and dim, unsettled by their own sense of insignificance. Imagine someone who only feels real when they see themselves reflected in another person's eyes. For them, intimacy is not truly about closeness or pleasure. It is about reassurance. It serves as proof that they still matter and can still capture another person's focus and affection. When that steady stream of validation fades, they begin to feel emotionally unstable. It can seem as if their sense of self is coming apart. The troubling behaviors that follow are attempts to hold themselves together. They scramble to regain a feeling of stability in a world that suddenly feels uncertain. Beneath many of their close relationships is a hidden motive, seeking affirmation. They are not just looking for companionship, they are looking for the glow of attention and approval. They try to wrap themselves in someone else's confidence and warmth. But because they cannot generate lasting self-worth on their own, that borrowed confidence always fades. They need reassurance again and again. The real crisis comes when they realize that the reassurance they depended on is no longer available. It's a malignant panic. They begin engaging in sexual scavenging patterns, scrolling through old photographs, monitoring former partners, or plunging into reckless, low-value encounters simply to ignite a spark of former power. Envision a dying star as the metaphor. In their prime, the narcissist's gravity seemed immense, pulling everyone into orbit. They felt like a blazing sun fueled by conquest. But when access to primary supply diminishes, the fuel runs dry. They enter a swollen, unstable phase, aggressive and desperate to consume anything nearby to prolong survival. Their disturbing behaviors are the violent flares of a fading star, erratic, destructive, and ultimately pointless. They are attempting one final burn before going permanently cold. Internally, chaos forms a loop between shame and grandiosity. Because they relied on sex as a reset button for insecurity, they never developed the capacity to process emotion authentically. Now that the reset fails, shame accumulates like toxic residue. They are haunted by former partners, not from remorse, but because those individuals symbolize a vitality they no longer command. The energy once taken for granted becomes a gallery of decline. They are surrounded by tarnished trophies and memories that emphasize present impotence. Consider the metabolic expense of maintaining grandiosity. Sustaining the mask demands enormous psychological energy. As age advances and sexual supply wanes, their reserves deplete. The persona becomes too heavy to carry. The grotesque habits surface as the mask slips publicly. Pettiness emerges, grooming deteriorates, a bitter sexual entitlement seeps through. They believe the world owes them the vitality they once extracted. When that payment fails to arrive, they erupt in immature, corrosive rage. A predatory exhaustion settles in. They are weary of hunting, yet terrified of stillness. They constructed a life where rest equates to annihilation because they possess no inner calm to inhabit. Their transactional approach to sex has fractured attachment entirely. They cannot tolerate solitude, yet cannot sustain connection. Each new source of supply eventually becomes another mirror, reflecting the same decaying image. The lethal realization dawns: they are the consistent factor in every personal catastrophe. Man deprived of sexual supply, they turn to micro-scavenging. This is where the behaviors become unmistakably degrading. They provoke arguments solely to witness tears. They triangulate with strangers to incite jealousy. They perform digital exhibitionism, posting provocative content to bait responses. They descend from pursuing grand prey to consuming scraps. Any flicker of attention suffices. It resembles a documentary of decline, a once formidable predator reduced to irritation. Why is this significant for you? Because it exposes the illusion of their dominance. While you endured withdrawal after leaving, they were compounding a psychological debt that now suffocates them. The energy they extracted was never theirs to own. It was borrowed vitality they could never repay. Through these behaviors, they reveal systemic collapse. Their bankruptcy is self-created. You are liberated to expand. They are confined to deterioration. You were always the source of light. They were merely the shadow attempting possession. We now approach the next chapter, the pivotal fracture. Here the mask does not merely slip its splinters. Publicly, we examine what unfolds when outdated seduction tactics meet a world that has evolved beyond them. This is when the curse transforms into visible collapse. Their rage becomes both pitiful and frightening. As the thriller reaches its crest, and understanding becomes your armor. The predator is about to discover that the stolen energy was the only force preserving their humanity. The unraveling of the aging narcissist unfolds slowly within the gray chamber of isolation. This is the panic phase where the grotesque behaviors fully surface. Without the noise of sexual supply To drown the echo of emptiness, they must confront the self they have long evaded. That encounter reveals a stranger they barely recognize. The panic is total because they possess no inner resources to endure insignificance or solitude. They begin displaying forms of self-soothing pathology that are deeply disturbing. Watch the social fallout as the narcissist shifts into a sexual scavenger. They start pursuing individuals who are far younger, more fragile, or more emotionally damaged than themselves. They are searching for effortless energy. This is their revolting pattern of predatory grasping. They lean on age or supposed wisdom as if it grants authority. Yet what they radiate now is exhaustion, not allure. They are no longer the prize. They are the uncomfortable presence people quietly avoid. This social erasure cuts their ego repeatedly. They are fading into background noise in a world that once seemed to orbit them. Bonjan. When sexual supply is absent, they resort to physical and digital intrusion. They may accidentally send suggestive messages to former partners or post desperate, age-inappropriate thirst traps online. They are casting lines into empty water, testing whether the old bait still attracts attention. Notifications and likes become substitutes for authentic connection. It is a shrill digital cry for relevance. The ugliness lies in the surrender of dignity. They are publicly begging for ego validation, while observers respond with discomfort or pity. Consider the hygiene of the ego. As collapse progresses, both physical and psychological upkeep often deteriorate. Their manipulation grows sloppy. Lies become obvious and half-hearted. The grandiose mask receives less maintenance. This is the habit of apathy. They withdraw effort from the performance, yet still demand applause. They move through life, resentful and entitled, lamenting that no one understands them or that society has changed. They blame the sun for rising while clutching at fading shadows. Sexual bitterness begins to dominate. They attack intimacy itself and resent beauty in others. They become hypocritical, critical, and quietly malicious toward genuinely happy people. This is the practice of poisoning the well. If they cannot access energy, they prefer that no one else enjoy it. They pose as moral authorities or cynical critics, disguising envy as virtue. The spite exposes the deeper decay. They rule over emptiness like monarchs of a graveyard. A visceral anxiety often manifests as bodily hypochondria. Without sexual supply to drown out inner silence, they become acutely aware of aging and mortality. Obsession with illness or decline grows. Pity supply replaces sexual supply. They seek sympathy, caretaking, and emotional donations under the banner of suffering. The manipulation is subtle yet corrosive. Vulnerability becomes a tool designed to tether you to their failing orbit. Observe how the script unravels. They recycle pickup lines and personal stories that worked decades ago. They become a museum of outdated tactics. This is pathological redundancy. So disconnected from reality, they assume no one notices the same seduction template deployed repeatedly. Innovation is gone. Freshness is absent. They are an echo playing to an empty auditorium. Their sexual downfall is the recognition that the audience has lost interest. Petty energy theft intensifies. They fabricate rivals to spark jealousy. They imply admirers who may not exist. They leak vague hints about other people competing for them. The tactic is transparent and desperate. They attempt to manufacture demand for a damaged product. Desire is so craved that even basic truths are distorted. They are starving for a flicker of relevance they no longer command. Men's the tone sharpens because the final descent is not graceful. They are losing against time and reality. These habits are visible symptoms of decay. They present psychological debris as if it were treasure. Their sexual doom stems from a failure to cultivate genuine heart. Surrounded by living bodies, they remain internally static and alone. The predator now rummages for crumbs in the shadows of personal failure. The narrative nears its last act, and the scavenger is being phased out. We now approach the concluding chapter, the decisive revelation. Here the focus shifts to you, the survivor. Their collapse becomes your renewal. Closure does not come from them. It comes from your clarity. The tone rises, cinematic and empowering. While they remain trapped in the scavenger's void, you step into open light. Their degrading habits are their destiny. Your healing is your sovereignty. Insight becomes enduring freedom. Here is the final truth, the strike that breaks the spell. The narcissist's sexual downfall and grotesque behaviors are not tragedies deserving grief. They are predictable outcomes of a life structured around extraction. You were never foolish for loving deeply. They were impoverished by their inability to truly receive. Their curse confirms your worth. The fact that they unravel in the silence of unmet desire proves that the vitality they drained from you was the only thing sustaining their illusion of humanity. You were the source. They were the emptiness trying to consume it. Emotional closure arrives when you fully recognize their emptiness. You stop waiting for an apology because any apology from a scavenger is merely another lure. You understand that their sexual downfall is the universe's apology on your behalf. The hidden truth is that the narcissist is already hollow inside. They are a biochemical phantom drifting through a life they never truly occupied. Healing begins the instant you stop staring back at the predator and begin facing forward toward your sovereign self. You were never simply prey. You survived something that is now irrelevant. Empowerment is reclaiming authorship of your story. The narcissist attempted to cast you as a disposable battery in their theater of extraction, but you have taken back the pen. You are rewriting your narrative with integrity, authenticity, and meaningful connection as the central forces. Their grotesque habits have become a subplot that resolved itself. You are no longer competing with the shadows of their frantic supply hunts. You are standing fully in the light of your own becoming. The dark thriller has ended. You have entered an epic of self-realization. Here is the final strike of truth. Their history of sexual extraction was proof of internal bankruptcy. Every conquest revealed their inability to afford genuine intimacy. They lingered in shallow waters because depth terrified them. But you embody depth. Your ability to feel pain means you can also feel joy. Your capacity for loss means you can experience love. They are doomed because they traded depth for a puddle. You are an ocean. Sovereign healing is the ceremonial closing of your sacred self. You seal your energy from predatory frequencies. You attune yourself to what is real. When you look at the aging narcissist and their degrading behaviors, you feel detached clarity. They hold no influence because they lack substance. They were a distortion in your experience of love, one you have already decoded. You are whole. You are sovereign. You are free. Their curse confines them. Awareness liberates you. Offer yourself the closure you once sought from them. I was never defective. I was harvested, and now I am growing again. Their collapse becomes compost for your renewal. The pain they caused becomes the catalyst for your elevation. You are evolving into the self they feared, self-sustaining, aligned, and unreachable by manipulation. Their holodrama concludes with their curse. Your healing begins a new chapter entirely. You have transformed. You have transmuted. Consider the survivors reading this now. We are a community awakened to truth. We are light, revealing emptiness. By witnessing their degrading behaviors, we validate the authenticity of the heart. We end cycles of exploitation. We reclaim intimacy as sacred. Your healing is rebellion against predatory dynamics. You are living evidence that integrity prevails. They are sentenced to isolation. You are destined for union within yourself and with something greater. Many as the credits roll on this psychological unraveling, remember the final line. The predator's winter is silent, but the survivor's spring is orchestral. They remain trapped in memory of energy they will never access again. You are stepping into warmth that endures. Their static fades into darkness. Your signal strengthens. You endured the curse and claimed the blessing. The thriller concludes. Truth endures. You are unbreakable. You are home. Let the reality of freedom settle deeply within you. Their disturbing habits follow natural consequences. You do not need to enforce. Release the burden of revenge. Existence handles the reckoning. Your task is simple. Live honestly. Live fully. Live boldly. The predator's vacuum is self-created. Your life fills space with atmosphere and breath. You prevailed because you stayed human in the presence of emotional emptiness. You are alive. You are walking out of the graveyard into a world where your light belongs to you, where your energy is guarded, where your soul is not currency. May they remain behind. A starving echo in a hall of mirrors forever, chasing reflections they cannot grasp. They may continue scavenging, but they will do so without you as prey. Your recovery is the triumph. Your calm is the power. Your sovereignty is the final reality. Reclaim every fragment of energy once taken. A parasite cannot endure without a host. A whole spirit generates its own fire. You are that fire.